I'm just going to start now. Thank you. So hi everyone. Welcome to our Financial Crime RegTech Edge event. In the spirit of reconciliation, the RegTech Association acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Financial crime is always a popular topic for our ecosystem, and today's session is no different. To date, we've had nearly 14,000 people from more than 75 countries attend our programs. I'll just get everyone to mute if possible. Thank you. Today, we have 210 registrations from 16 countries that include 45 regulated institutions, 9 government regulators, 4 investors and 68 RegTechs. So just a bit of housekeeping. Today we will be recording the event and every registered delegate will receive a recording. If you could please have your cameras and mics off unless you're presenting, thank you. And all questions in the chat, please. And please don't be shy. Ask lots of questions of our presenters. There will be some polls and some questions put in that chat, and I'd encourage you to get involved, comment, and enable the presenters to be on their game. I'd also encourage our presenters to put in the chat any case studies or any other materials that might be useful for our attendees today. Our presenters have 5 minutes. It isn't long and it flies by. Craig Davis, our MC, will turn his camera on at the 4.5 minute mark. And this is your cue, the presenter's cue, that you've got 30 seconds left. And if you see me, then you know that your time is definitely up. Our presenting RegTechs today are Apply ID, CloudCheck, Encompass, FeedsEye, Finergo, Napier and Quantexa. And in the chat function, there is a one-line summary of each of those companies. But today, to start off with, we're very lucky to have our MC, Craig Davis from the KPMG. He's a partner in the risk, strategy and technology practice. He focuses on risk and regulatory transformation initiatives and leads KPMG's RegTech practice. Prior to rejoining KPMG Australia, Craig led the risk management practices in KPMG Canada and Singapore, with a leadership role across Asia Pacific. And prior to that, he was the capital markets lead for KPMG Australia. Craig's industry experience includes roles at major banks in Australia and the UK. I'll just get you to mute, thank you. Across the lines of sales, trading, operations and risk, and also regulation APRA as a risk specialist. And whilst in Canada, Craig also acts as a board advisor to the Canadian RegTech Association. This unique mix of industry, consulting, regulation and international experience allows Craig to bring valuable insights to clients looking to enhance their risk and compliance functions. So without further ado, please welcome Craig to our virtual stage.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that, Alison. Look, welcome everyone to this event this afternoon. I just wanted to kick off proceedings a bit with a bit of an overview of why I believe that, you know, RegTech is very important in this space. Look, we were actually hoping to have our financial crime lead do this session this afternoon, but she was unfortunately called away at the last minute. And so I think she'll be back later to do a sort of a more detailed deep dive. But look, I guess from a pure RegTech perspective, you know, this is quite an important space. And look, and I've just put this slide up. As I said, I won't talk to it in great detail, but I just want to touch on the complexity of the particular area that we're playing in. And this is really just focusing on financial crime. If we look at this space more broadly that we're touching today, you know, it goes across a number of areas, across fraud, obviously financial crime, sanctions, you got market conduct, and then you start to get into some of the subset issues such as AML, CTF, ABC, etc. And obviously they're sort of closely related or non-financial crime areas such as modern slavery, exploitation and the like, which, you know, a number of people are finding now that there are direct linkages between let's say the financial crime side of things and those particular areas, which are great for joining the dots. But again, it's adding another layer of complexity to everything that needs to be done. So, you know, if we look at the breadth of this area, and the complexity around it, there's also, a number of touch points that organisations have to look at, right across the value chain. They've got to understand the threats to start with to a particular product or transaction. They need to be able to accurately identify their clients and fully understand their backgrounds, and then introduce accurate and efficient monitoring activities to detect and prevent the issues. In addition to this, though, it's all typically being addressed in an environment where there's poor data, such as limited client information. You have a lot of manual controls that tend to introduce another layer of operational risk, as well as potentially spoiling the client experience that they deal with your particular organisation. And look, a lot of this too just leads to a lot of inefficient and ineffective monitoring processes, which all adds to additional work as you've got to, wade through, large amounts of information to get to the right outcomes. So yeah, look, very broad, very complex environment, and a very challenging one right now. So obviously very ripe for technology to come in and help out. So look, on that front, there are some organisations that are becoming, more mature in this space, and they are taking advantage of RegTech to really shift the dial from sort of process improvement type opportunities to sort of active intelligence and investigation. Through the use of RegTech vendors and emerging technology, organisations are starting to move to a proactive threat hunting phase. So from, I guess, say, being reactive to really sort of digging deep and identifying things before they start to occur. And this is leveraging techniques such as network analysis, leveraging advanced analytics, and starting to incorporate alternative sources of data such as social media. This is all then sort of leading or tapping into allowing for the introduction of things like real-time reporting of KPIs, KRIs, etc., and improved visualization, which sound quite straightforward, but they're actually quite challenging to do and very important in terms of getting senior management across the challenges that the organisations are potentially going to face, and really identifying those emerging risks before they turn into something a little bit more toxic. So look, so that said, I just wanted to give a very broad, high-level overview so people can start to put what the vendors are going to come up with today into a little bit of context. I'm sure that the vendors that you're going to see are going to address a number of the areas that I've just touched on, and probably a few more that I haven't, as I said, given the sort of how broad and complex this area is. So on that note, I think we'll probably kick things off, and I think I'm handing over to Chelsea from Apply ID to get things going. Over to you, Chelsea.
Wonderful. Thank you, Craig. Well, let's just jump straight in. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So essentially, Apply ID is a provider of an end-to-end bespoke customer onboarding journey. So we're currently working with organisations including banks, lenders and more to provide digital application forms and ID verification solutions to help you to onboard customers digitally within 5 minutes, while also helping you to stay compliant with those AML, KYC, KYB and all the other regulations. So we're also having a lot of conversations more recently with accountants, law firms, and anyone affected by the upcoming Tranche 2 changes. Next. So the Apply Form solution is our digital onboarding form, and it's a completely bespoke solution which can be built to digitize and streamline any data capture and onboarding exercises. Right now, we're working with quite a few banks and lenders to digitize their application form by automating both the data capture side and the decisioning piece. So this Apply Form solution allows for built-in knockout rule sets, integrations into credit bureaus, government databases, and heaps more to help you to gather all that information and also background information on a prospective client. And of course, it is integrated with our ID verification solution. Next, please. So Apply ID offer 2 types of ID verification platforms to help you with your KYC and AML compliance. We have the electronic ID verification, which allows you to verify an individual against one ID document, so a passport or driver license. And we also have the VOI solution, which takes a customer through a flow to gather 100 points of ID. So when that's plugged into the apply form solution, the customer journey is also completely dynamic, meaning that the ID verification they're requested to complete will vary depending on the type of customer that they will be for you. But both the ID verification solutions can be completely branded as your company and also fully integrated either into our apply form solution or into your current flow. And both of these solutions do a full biometric face match and liveness detection, spoof and tampering checks, PEP and sanctions and adverse media, DVS checks and credit header data checks with an ongoing match rate of over 90% globally. So just in the last quarter, we actually had a 93% match rate for the thousands of checks that were done through our system and our solution. Next, please. So in terms of the onboarding journey, as mentioned, the purpose is to offer an end-to-end solution to help you to gather that customer information, complete an ID check, and then have an automated decision. Next, please. So that's just a visual representation of that. Next, please. And throughout the process, the form is completely dynamic and is event-driven. Next. So what I mean by that is essentially in this scenario, if a credit score returns as 650, you may have your next step as executing a bank statement check. Next. And another example might be that if the credit score is 400, then you may want to actually stop the application process and push the customer to the credit team. Next. We have an example of a happy path and an unhappy path on the next slide. And moving forward again, please. So we also allow automated customer communication. So what this would mean is, for example, they would receive an email or text to follow up if they drop off throughout the application process, or an email to let them know what the next steps will be, and so on. Next. The next two slides will show you that we do offer in-depth reporting and dashboards. Thank you. Moving on. And we also allow integration into third-party CRMs and databases. So right now we do already have established partnerships with a few providers, as you can see on the screen there, but we can essentially integrate with any database that can consume an open API or even a JSON file. Next. And we also have a few out-of-the-box finance integrations that we offer as well. Next. We also offer in-depth analytics to help you to really control the user experience based off user behaviours. So the whole point of this is once it's built, it can be completely, adapted and changed with drag and drop functionality so that you can actually see and make changes to this form based off how your customers interact. So where they drop off, where there's lag time, and so on. We'll move forward, please. And again. So essentially here, just a summary of a few main points as to why the Apply ID end-to-end onboarding solution is one of a kind. We do have a lot of customers using it, not only to help them to scale and onboard a higher volume of customers, but also allowing them to do it in the safest way possible with the least amount of resistance and risk. We have a lot of tech and processes in place to help you to reduce the risk of fraud while ensuring the onboarding process is not cumbersome and time-consuming for your customers or for your team. Next, please. So yeah, that's it. I'd love to answer any questions that you may have and maybe even book in a demo for anyone who would like to see a more in-depth run through. Thank you so much.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Chelsea. Right on time. So yes, I guess please feel free to put any questions in the chat and we'll try to get to them if we can as we go through. But otherwise now I'm going to hand over to CloudCheck and Vincent, I believe. Yep.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Craig. Next slide, please. So firstly, who are we? Some of you would have heard of us before, some not potentially, and the reason you may not have heard of us is basically we don't generally shout and scream about what we do. We let our products and service speak for themselves, and we've got a lot of our business over the years via referrals and our reputation in the market, as opposed to lots of glossy marketing, which probably ought to get on top of, to be honest. So a bit of background on us: we established in 2012 in New Zealand, specifically for the AML CFT Act. So this is exactly what we do. It's all we've done over the past 10 years. It's what we like to specialise in. But then early this year, we were acquired by GBG PLC. out of the UK, and if you're most of you are Australian based, you'll know GBG for their global fraud and identity solutions, including also owning Green ID over in Australia. About 1,000 reporting entities across Australia and New Zealand currently use us, so we're not a tiny little company, we're fairly big nowadays, and we're only one of 3 companies that has direct access to Australian and New Zealand government data, so DVS and the DIA. One of the other 2 companies is Green ID, and the third one is a credit bureau. So any other vendor saying they have DIA and DVS access, again, it's secondhand. So you got to worry about, have to think there about how many people your data is passing through before it gets to you. Next slide, please. Common misconceptions we hear all the time is that it's KYC is too hard. I'm sure your experts on the line here know that it's not too hard if you have the right tools in place. It's so complicated you might need to outsource. It's expensive and one size fits all. You know, if you're hearing that, you've been told incorrectly, and if you do have those experiences and you're doing it wrong right now, we have tools to make everything, all the hard bits here, go away. Next slide, please. So why do people use us? Firstly, is the ease of integration, and it's intuitive. We only have quality data in there. As I mentioned, our reputation precedes us and gets most of our business for us. We like to innovate, bring new products to the market, and try to be a leader in lots of areas. Flexibility, which I'll come on to more details in a moment, and customization and development is also one of our strong points. And our product is fully customizable straight out of the box, but if there's anything extra you need doing, we'll happily develop it for you. Next slide, please. The data integrity that I mentioned, we don't like to put any rubbish data, as it were, any secondhand data, marketing lists, anything like that in our service. We only want robust data that's been vetted by a global team. We currently have 30 different databases in there, and there's more international data coming soon from another 20 countries or so. As I mentioned there about the Australian, New Zealand government data. So if you want the direct access to the data, then please do get in touch. And we also don't force anything upon you. It's entirely up to you what data you utilize. Make sure you're happy with it. And you get to choose which data you have in your service and when to use it, and only pay for what you use. So you're not paying for information you don't require. Next slide, please. Innovation, there's quite a lot on this slide, but conscious of time, so I just want to focus on our new biometric product, ID Scan, from our parent GBG. It is bank grade biometric tool with over 4,000 documents in there as the templates to check against the document tampering checks. It has auto capture for documents and passive liveness detection. It's got a nicer certification around that too. So there's no need for your client to move your head in any funny directions like some other solutions and or say phrases. It picks all up automatically without those additional movements. And it's also available on desktop and mobile, so you're not restricted to your user having to switch to their mobile to do the biometric checks. It's fully works brilliantly on standard webcams. Next slide, please. On the flexibility side, as I mentioned, integration, it's up to you how you use our service, whether web portal, APIs, etc. We don't mind, whatever's going to suit your business. Data, including PEP and sanction checks, bank account verification, and KYB, are all available in there if you want to utilize them. A couple of different biometric solutions, and how you want to pay for it is up to you as well, whether you want a subscription service or pay-as-you-go service, whatever the size of business you have. We have a pricing plan to suit your requirements. Next slide, please. And a few of our selected customers on screen here, just so you know who uses us, some names I'm sure you recognise there. You notice there's also some government areas on there as well. So New Zealand Government Ministry of Health and Australian Government Animal Welfare Victoria. That's just 2 of the many government departments that use us across Australia and New Zealand. So if we're, I guess, solid enough for governments to use us, then I'm sure we can. Our solution can be used by you also as well. And then on to the final slide, please. And here's some details on screen here. Please come to our website, cloudcheck.com.au or verifyidentity.com, and happily take you through the service in more detail. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. That was very interesting and very good time-wise as well. So we'll now move on to Encompass. And Gary, is it?
It is indeed. Thank you very much, and thanks for that intro. Very topical and thematic. Next slide, please. Hi, everyone. My name's Gary Clark. I'm an account director at Encompass. We were founded in Australia in 2011, so we've been in this space for over 10 years now and founded out of Australia. But we now have a global presence in terms of the data that can flow through our platform and our own presence with offices around the world in New York, London, Glasgow, Singapore, Amsterdam, Belgrade, and a team of roaming people in North America now as well. We have extensive data coverage, and I'll touch on this a little bit more in the presentation, but we have connections to over 200 different jurisdictions and 160 plus different global data products available to access through our platform. And you can see in the box some of the strategic partners and the global customers that we work with. We work with a range of partners such as data providers, CLM and CRM capabilities, and we have a number of global customers ranging from financial institutions, banks, law firms such as Santander, Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, and here in Australia, ANZ and NAB. Next slide, please. I'll not spend any time laboring this slide on the big problem, but this is why we came into this space to address some of these issues. We find that regulated firms under increasing pressure, customer experience now is a competitive advantage, and compliance is seen as a cost center taking budget cuts. But KYC due diligence is more complex than ever and ever changing, as I'm sure resonates with many on the line. Trying to keep up with all of the data that's required and all of the myriad of sources you need to acquire it from and follow a process step by step that's efficient and scalable is proving very, very difficult, as the manual processes in place really are just buckling and inefficiencies are ballooning out as costs increase. Next slide, please. So what do we do at Encompass? We are a software as a service and a true intelligent process automation platform. Encompass is a single access point, so all of the necessary data that's publicly available in the domain for your KYC and AML checks. We have access, as I said, to over 160 of those different global data platforms, so we can be that single entry point, but then we combine it into our platform and run through a set of predefined business rules to follow the step-by-step process your analysts would be going through today, but doing it through an automated digital fashion. Next slide, please. What that looks like here is our access to the data sets. You can see that at the top. So that includes global registries and regulatory information, stock exchanges from around the world, business and corporate information, the premium business data providers, PEP sanctions and negative news screening, and EID providers partnerships as well. So what happens is you input a target entity name into Encompass. We run our set of business rules that reflect what you as an organization would be doing today or aspire to do. We unwrap automatically the UBOs and the ownership structure down to whatever percentage is required. We can call upon screening data as we're identifying those shareholders and directors along the chain and combining the unwrapping with the screening, cross-checking the documents, checking different sources for data, and bringing that all together and making sure it's sufficiently matched and merged. It's not just about taking data from one point and dropping it into another, but smartly automating the way through. A good example of that is PTY Limited is the same as Proprietary Limited, but it's different on two sources, but we can connect those and achieve the straight through processing to ultimately package up a digital KYC profile, which then can be consumed into your organization. Next slide, please. And what does that mean? It means efficiency gain, so cost reduction. But because it is machine doing it, we also have the control and consistency elements as well. You know, as someone senior up, that the process that you've signed off on is followed the same way every single time, that there's a machine calculating this and there's a massive reduction in human error, which ultimately leads to better customer experience and reduction of onboarding times. And you can see here, Santander was able to go down from 12 days to 2 days. Next slide, please. And we believe in really digitalizing this process and putting in something that's future-proof, moving towards the perpetual KYC model with a digital KYC record that can be integrated into your CLMs and CRMs and easily refreshed. Next slide, please. As you can see, we've been able to reduce the time taken to aggregate KYC data by up to 98% and are happy to talk about a proving exercise to do so. Next slide, please. And this is my final slide, is a case study I wanted to include on Santander, who we were able to get their onboarding time down from 12 days to 2 days, reducing 80% of effort along the way. So much improved customer experience, much improved control and consistency in the process, but also a massive reduction of cost within the process as well.
Okay.
And that's everything from me. Thank you for your time. Please reach out with any questions. Thank you for the RegTech Association.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. Okay, on to our next vendor, FeedSci, and Sean. Over to you, mate.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to follow another Irish accent. I think there's a few of us on this call here. So anyway, Sean here. I'm the general manager of FeedSci across Asia Pacific, and like this is a fascinating topic. You know, how do we make sense of all these different solutions? Like, I'm just considerate of what's happening here on this this RegTech event. It's a little bit like speed dating for vendors, and you know, how do you actually manage to even understand what's happening from a technology perspective? We're getting bombarded with new regulations. Scams are happening at a global level at a pace that we've never seen before. The cost of managing all of this technology is a real challenge. There's a challenge around trying to bring together the right skills and the right people who actually understand this domain. It's a real challenge, and how do we make sense of it? Well, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 minutes, I'll give you some sense that there is a way forward. I actually think it's quite simple. So let's see how I close it out and see whether you agree with me. Next slide, please. So a quick one on FeedSci. I think most of you will probably know FeedSci at this stage. We've been around since 2011. We've got about 700 people. This slide's a little bit out of date, and we're all over the world. We've got tier 1 companies. We're in North America, South America with offices across Europe. We've opened up an office in the Middle East. We're in Africa, and in Asia we've got big teams of data scientists and engineers and delivery people, and myself here in Australia, and also in Hong Kong and in Singapore. And recently we've opened up an office in India. So we're expanding. We're in this strong scale-up area, and we're very successful. And we're successful for a reason, because we do like to try and keep things simple. The simplicity of our solution is that we're able to process huge amounts of information in real time to give you back a response in milliseconds. And as difficult as that might sound, with today's tech, it's really possible. And one of the reasons why we're scaling at an incredible rate is because we're now doing this in the cloud. And that's our entire focus of our strategy, is to bring together all of the right solutions for everything to do around a full customer lifecycle journey in the cloud. So next, please. Now, the Wolfsburg Group, if you haven't heard of them, are some of the top banks in the world who came together to actually put some guidelines to try and manage the story around, how do we actually improve the situation. They recently launched a document which is online in the public domain around managing customer lifecycle risk management. Now, they're actually saying in this document, it's a quote from it, that digital is the exact same as traditional. Now, for them to come out and say we need to put principles in place to advise banks globally to be able to put in a risk management program across the full customer lifecycle means this is a real challenge. And again, the simplicity of it is we need to have an accurate profile of customer risk. So next, please. And next again. So what is the challenge? Well, information is changing in real time at an incredible rate. So if the information around your customer is changing at an incredible rate, well, then your customer risk profiles are out of date in milliseconds. And the challenge, again, it's an information challenge. The data's all over the place because we've got these multiple systems, multiple technology instances, which are not talking to each other. Next, please. And again. So again, this is my one simple slide about what we do. We actually do everything. We do everything in the cloud. One instance, one very tightly integrated product, covering all of the risk controls that you need to manage for fraud and financial crime across the full customer life cycle. So that's from onboarding right way through to verifying who they are, then monitoring all financial and non-financial events. So that's payments, transactions, customer information, any modification a customer may use. For every single use case you can see here, It's all tightly integrated because what's our goal? We need to manage this at a customer-centric level. And we're actually doing this, and we're doing it for some of the top banks in the world. And if you've got a greenfield site and it's a brand new digital bank, we're actually implementing this in 3 different continents right now for some of the biggest digital banks in the world. Every single use case, all tightly integrated, managing the customer's experience and risk controls. So next one, please. So the future is now, right? We can do this now because the tech is there, we're doing it, and we're doing it on one platform. But the real recommendation is you need to bring this together from a logical fashion in your organization. If you've got a digital bank in greenfields, you can do it straight away. But you need to bring it together as a logical fashion and pick it off bit by bit, proactively. Don't react. You don't have time to react, so proactively. You need to do it from a holistic level, so at a customer-centric level, and do it for every single channel. Thank you. Next one. So there's my email address. I'm bang on time, and thank you very, very much for your attention.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Sean. And yes, now we have Fenergo and Ian, I believe.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, all good.
And
go for it.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Craig, and to everybody else. And I'm afraid it's another Irish presenter. We're everywhere. Next slide, please. So Fenergo's purpose is to help financial institutions prevent financial crime. So our belief is we can do this while improving their client experience and commerciality, so they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Owen Keating. I'm the sales director here across ANZ at Fenergo. I want to tell you a little bit about why we exist, how we set ourselves apart in the industry, and what we offer to clients to help achieve these goals. Next slide, please. So a little bit like what you've heard today, about 13 years ago, our founder, Mark Murphy, was working for a software company in Europe, developing software for FIs, and saw a perfect storm forming. So we had regulatory burden in the areas of AML and CTF, investor protection, OTC derivative reform, tax, organizations working in multiple jurisdictions, things like what we see nowadays in privacy, risk, and ESG. And that was causing increased operational inefficiencies and increased costs. So how do these organizations stay compliant? It affects really large multinationals as well as small FIs. So it's difficult to compete and affects the cost, but it was affecting the client experience. So it was impacting the client experience, that time to onboard, the financial institution and bank's relationship and engaging with the customers, having too many touch points and multiple data and document collection. And of course, this affected the revenue growth. So the time to yes, cost to income, and competition was coming in from neobanks and digital and more agile solutions on the market. So next slide, please. So Fenergo was born. So as I said, over the past 13 years, we've done very well. We're now recognized globally by multiple independent analysts as the #1 provider of client lifecycle management, KYC and onboarding solutions. We're doing well. We've just hit the $1 billion valuation mark. We have over 850 staff globally, 100 of them here in Australia, and we're hiring at the moment. And we have close to 100 clients now live on the platform. Next slide, please. So how do we set ourselves apart? So we do things a little bit differently. When we first started, financial institutions were approaching the challenge in isolation. So we quickly formed a community of our clients to bring a compliance by design. So what do I mean by that? So we bring all of our clients together, both globally and locally here in Australia and New Zealand. We deal with all the big banks as well as about 14 other financial institutions. So we bring teams from both Fenergo and from the client. So we're not just a software, we have consultancy as well. And we look at the regulations that are coming down the line. We look at the technology requirements. We look at what executives and clients are looking for. And then Fenergo build that into our platform at our cost. And it's available to all clients across all segments. Because we use SaaS technology now, we can offer the same platform to any size financial institution, whether you're a small fintech payment organization, all the way up to big banks and multinationals. So the platform comes out of the box with all the features. You just enable what you need. And of course, we just charge accordingly. Next slide, please. So just for the sake of time, I'll go through this quickly, but if I pick a few clients here, we look at the likes of PNC Bank in the States, probably the 5th largest bank across the US. They wanted to increase operational efficiencies. They had 100 touch points to onboard a client. They implemented Finergo. We brought that down to less than 10. So we reduced the client onboarding time, but in using the CLM system, now at over 2,500 members have a single view of the client across the organization and integrate into their Salesforce CRM. If we look at ABN AMRO or locally CBA, they had a very similar challenge with regards to KYC and CDD and AML requirements. They had multiple teams, multiple technologies, and the need to enhance KYC across the group. They needed to improve compliance and client experience. So Finergo was selected to provide a digital CLM backbone who will offer a single client view regardless of the business unit and offer a truly digital experience to all the clients. So this improves that time to yes, reduces the cost, and improves the overall client experience. Next slide, please. So how we solve this. So our client lifecycle management platform software makes it safer and easier to do business. We deliver meaningful data-led insights, and we help ensure compliance, transform the operations, enhance the client experience, and anticipate future needs. And last slide. So what do? We address the challenges. We put the client at the heart of the business journey in keeping the community safe. We've worked with all our clients to build a platform. We've invested over $500 million onto the platform. That is, in essence, gives that compliance by design. We mutualize that cost. So we digitize the client journey, any client type, any product type, any event. So it could be onboarding, maintenance, refresh, remediation, offboarding, transaction monitoring. We integrate in with all your systems, surface in your Salesforce, in your CRMs, in your banking apps, and we work across all jurisdictions, across all the regulations I mentioned earlier on. And we address those challenges that I mentioned and align with your goals. So last slide, please. So it's a very quick time, 5 minutes. I hope I covered enough there. My details are on the screen. There's a QR code. If you'd like to contact me, learn more about Finergo, please do so. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Owen. And apologies, I think I called you Ian at the start. So
no problem at all.
So next we have Napier, and Ed is going to talk us through this one.
Thanks, Craig, and thanks RegTech Association, and it's a really nice presentation. So I'm looking forward to give you a little bit of an overview about Napier today. Next slide, please. So just a very high-level introduction, a little bit about our leadership team, a little bit about the community, some of the challenges we see in the marketplace, a little bit about our value prop, the Napier Continuum platform, we're a modularised solution, and some client testimonials. Next slide, please. Yeah, just a little bit about us. We were founded in 2015. We're headquartered out of the UK, and we've got offices in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. And we've got about 210 employees and are growing pretty quickly, and about 220 plus clients. And across a real range of different types of financial services businesses, and we've got a bit of a split down the bottom. But ultimately, it's all about making the compliance job easier for people to do, meeting those regulatory requirements and standing up to financial crime. Next slide, please. A little bit about our leadership team. We've got probably close to 200 years of combined experience here. And we've got people who have worked at some fairly high-level institutions, such as Andy Maguire, who's ex-HSBC. Our Chief Executive Officer, Julian Dixon, who's ex-Deutsche Bank. And he also has been in a position of compliance manager. And really, Napier was driven out of his frustration of not being able to find anything in the market to suit his purpose in terms of that compliance risk. Next slide, please. We partner with the best and supreme data providers such as Refinitiv and Dow Jones, and we also work with other integrators who support back-end systems as well. We also work fairly closely with some of the consulting organisations to help them serve their customers. So we've got relationships at the higher end, but also at the lower end of that market. Next slide, please. We've also won quite a few awards of late, and these awards are ones that you don't necessarily buy a table at the dinner and spend a whole lot of money and get an award. These are awards driven purely by merit. And most recently, we were awarded Best RegTech by FinTech London, which we're very proud of. Cybersecurity we take quite seriously, so we've got ISO 27001 certified and also SOC 2. Next slide, please. So what we see in the marketplace is typically there are a lot of applications there which are sometimes siloed. There's a lot of sort of manual requirements to focus when you're focusing on AML. There's a lot of duplication and, you know, material risk is not necessarily being surfaced. So what we're trying to do at Napier is to pull all those products together in one end-to-end solution. So we're talking about KYC, CDD, transaction screening, customer screening, and transaction monitoring, all in that one area, and sharing that information across the one platform in the one user interface. And on top of that, we're able to apply another level of AI and machine learning to really reduce the material risk that is being evolved, and anything which hasn't been picked up by your typical rules-based analysis at that lower level. And so what this means to you is that, typically speaking, you'll only be raising that material risk and acting on that accordingly and not wasting your time on other issues. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about the Napier Continuum. And what we talk about on this platform is it's an end-to-end solution. So we go typically from gathering any information at a KYC level, bringing that into the Napier platform and doing initial risk assessment in our risk-based scorecard, and then doing some PEP and sanction screening using the data providers that we plug into the system, which we've already built integration for. And then the customer will interact with your organisation, whether we're monitoring their transactions, whether they're doing screenings, or whether we're doing transaction screening. And that's all captured in our client activity analysis view. And if any alerts are raised, we're able to investigate those. And then we're able to do what we call a KYC refresh and an additional risk assessment. And they can keep going around in that continuum structure. Next slide, please. There are three ways you can connect. We can sit on top of a current solution if you have one in place and been invested in it. It can be either point to point, or it can be that full end-to-end solution. Next slide, please. These are some of our differentiating features and capability: that holistic view, segment agnostic, configurable platform, intuitive UI, and a no-code environment. Next slide. And just a quick recommendation from some of our customers I'd like to leave you with. And then lastly, my contact details at the end. Thank you very much for the time to present today.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Ed. Okay, I think we're doing very well for time today, and we have, last but not least, Quantexta and Holly. Is it Holly or no, not Holly? Sorry, Thomas.
It's Tom. I wish it was Holly.
Tom.
No,
yeah, I had Holly on my list here. No worries.
All good. Thanks,
Sorry,
Craig.
mate.
No worries. So thank you, Craig, and thanks again to the RegTech Association for inviting Quantexta back to present today. I'm Tom McNally, not Holly, and I'm Quantexta's AML and KYC solution lead here in APAC. So since the last time we presented at this forum, Quantexta's continued to go from strength to strength. We've recently hit 500 employees globally, and the 500th was actually hired here in Melbourne last month. To give a sense of kind of local client base, we've got 3 of the large 4 big banks here in Australia, as well as other clients across government, insurance and gaming. Now, most people are probably aware of Quantexta for our leading AML investigations and kind of monitoring solution. However, what I'm really excited to be discussing today is our increasingly popular and award-winning KYC solution. We're really proud to say that our perpetual KYC solution has enabled firms to dramatically increase the efficiency and effectiveness of their processes and actually move away from the lengthy KYC periodic review cycles into full-blown continuous or perpetual KYC. Previously, this was something that was an aspirational conversational topic. We've now made that reality for clients globally and are seeing huge benefits both in terms of risk and cost. Next slide, please. Now, we've achieved this by taking a fundamentally new approach to data and solve one of the biggest challenges that financial institutions have today. truly knowing and understanding the customers and the context of their behaviours. And getting KYC right is absolutely the foundational aspect for all areas of financial crime and other risk management. But equally, we're starting to see that it's by solving the KYC problem and proactively understanding our customer and their behaviours, we can begin to change the mindset away from KYC being a kind of purely compliance regulatory cost centre to actually enabling better customer experience, better customer retention, and better customer insights. Next slide, please. So how do we achieve this? So our perpetual KYC solution is achieved using the foundational building blocks of the Quantexa platform, primarily the first two on the left here, which is entity resolution and network generation. So entity resolution is the ability to bring together vast and disparate sets of data. So whether that's internal data like your customers, your accounts, your transactions, as well as external data like corporate registry information, to provide a single 360-degree view of your customer across your enterprise and across your various lines of business. Network generation then allows you to understand the context of that customer within their broader network and the broader behavioral activities. You know, who do they transact with? Who are their counterparties and who do their counterparties transact with? Who might they share an address or a phone number or an email address with? And the ability to unpack hidden things like ultimate beneficial owners and what risks do they pose? So when combined, entity resolution and network generation, those two techniques enables us to have context and the context of our customer. And that context is revolutionary in truly understanding that risk of your customer and is very different to the traditional approach, which is based on kind of static data points at the point of onboarding. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to do an example to bring to life what I really mean here. So in the top left box, you can see the traditional internal view that a bank has of their customer. So it's the kind of information that's collected onboarding, as well as potentially, you know, payment information. With Quantexa's contextual KYC, what we allow you to do is automatically enrich that internal picture of your customer with external data. So in this instance, for example, we've got corporate registry information, and we've actually been able to use that to automatically unpack full corporate hierarchies and then identify where there might be things like hidden connections between a remitter and beneficiary of a payment, or a UBO that could be on a watch list. So these hidden risks, this hidden information that would previously have been, you know, unseen by your KYC analysts, and therefore the risk would either have gone undetected or would have been incredibly time consuming to actually identify it. Next slide, please. Now, as I mentioned previously, using Quantexa and its behavioral analysis, clients are actually able to move away from periodic refresh cycles in favor of a more continuous approach to KYC risk identification. On the left-hand side of the diagram, you can see that Quantexa continuously monitors for changes in the underlying data attributes of your customers using both internal and external data. And if a change is detected or there is an external trigger, the customer profile is updated and automatically a risk assessment is re-undertaken using entity resolution and network generation to reassess the risk and bring that to highlight to your own analyst in real time. So no longer are we relying on, you know, static data points for KYC to determine risk, and no longer are we waiting 1, 3, 5 year periodic refresh cycles to truly understand our customers' risk. It's all done in real time. Next slide, please. So I won't give them time to dive into this too much. I think the only one I'll probably call out right away is the automation of KYC data collection. So we believe we can collect around 75% of key data attributes for complex areas, for complex clients without needing human interaction. So that allows your analysts to focus on actually risk detection. And then just last slide, please. So that was very much a whistle-stop view of the solution, but thanks again to the RegTech Association for letting us speak today. I'd love to speak about it more and demo it to any clients that are interested. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I think thank you for keeping to the time limits, but also thank you for making the sessions actually extremely informative. And look, I think it highlights what I was talking about at the start in the sense that this is an extremely broad and extremely complex area, and I think we can tell by the diversity of the vendors that we had here today. You know, and I think this is a small snapshot of what's out there as to the the extent of that space. So so look, I think I'll hand over to Alison now to wrap things up.
Thank you. And thank you so much to all our presenters. We love providing you with a platform to showcase your innovative RegTech solutions. And a big thank you also to you, Craig. We have a very strong relationship with KPMG, which we value greatly. Anyone on the line and anyone who registered for this event will receive a link to the recording tomorrow. We have more events coming up, so please feel free to register for them. There's some slides coming up that have our events. They also have our 12 months achievements, our past 12 months achievements, and our roadmap for this current financial year. We might end the formal part of the event now, but we'll stay on for another 5 minutes or so in case you want to chat. So feel free to stay on. Otherwise, thanks everyone.